Good morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg and welcome to our show today. It is the 17th, my favorite number, day of March 2025, and welcome to our show today. Today we have Vicky Davis on with Technocratic Tyranny, and Karen the Riveter is going to be joining us this morning at 10 o'clock. Chris Kaijala is going to come on, and Chris is like one of my favorite. He's in my basket. You know, we all have baskets of people. I got baskets of people. He's in one of my favorites in election integrity people that's out there, because he's actually a data guy, and he digs down and finds out what's real, what's really going on. And I really like him a lot. He's a real super moderate as far as his approach to it. He doesn't get all kinds of crazy, and he just lays the facts out, which is really refreshing and wonderful. So anyhow, I want to bring on my buddies here. Ding, ding. How's you guys doing?
I'm doing just fine, thanks. A little worried, but
I think I'm in the basket of deplorables.
That's kind of a good thing, isn't it?
I got a bluebird out here sitting on my suet this morning. So pretty.
Oh,
nice.
That's fun. Well, you know, it's kind of nice to get on with you guys because we know each other so well that, you know, we just to not actually have to hit the ground running on Monday morning while we're still, you know, trying to wake up and get our feet on the ground. More coffee after the weekend is pretty nice. So I know everybody's got a lot going on right now, and it's really fun seeing what's happening. Did you guys see that 200 people in Trendiagra was they were deported to El Salvador?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
deal.
That I've seen videos of that prison that they have down there. It seems to me like that's a pretty great place for those guys.
I think so too, you know, and I mean, I have some opinions on this pity them kind of crap going on has got to come to an end. And that's how we got where we are right now. I'm sorry they've made bad choices. However, they cannot be loose in society to continue the horrible acts that they do. We have to remove them. And I thought the deal that they struck with El Salvador was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant, because they're not going to put up with their crap, right? And we had the discussion, and Karen, you were chiming in on this last week on Rikers prison because of a post that was put out, and that we should send all of the people in office to Rikers and get what they deserve, right? And I'm like, no, I think that we should maybe make a better choice, and that's if they go to prison and they commit a violent crime, it's an instant death penalty. They've already gotten a second chance by being there, and I mean, convict them. I'm not just saying, okay, you've done them without due process, but I'm saying that we do need to handle this stuff, because a psychopath knows what they're doing, and they don't care. They just don't care what they're doing. There's no conscience like the rest of us have. There's nothing that makes them feel sorry for the pain that they're inflicting. It actually makes them happy. It's one of those things that they get like almost a high off of. And years ago, I'm the founder of Grief and Loss Today, Advances in Hospice, Advances in Bereavement, and a couple other entities in it. And we got going down the path of dealing with sociopaths and narcissists, what a true narcissist is. And it's the same thing as a sociopath or a psychopath. It's someone who has no empathy. You can't change them. There's a guy named Sam Vaknin that's out there who has written some wonderful books on this. And he is a self-proclaimed narcissist. And so he writes it from the perspective of someone who has that disorder and where it really comes from, what happened to them. Some people are just wired that way at birth. Some people haven't had their needs met before they're 4. But once they're in that mindset, it's very difficult to change them, as well as the people around them want to be the rescuers, right? Well, probably a bad plan, because they're gonna use you as somebody to beat up on mentally, quite honestly. And the people that are doing these type of activities that are just horrific. And I mean, I've seen some of the things that they've done. A lot of you out there have seen what they're capable of. Probably not enough people should have seen what they're capable of, because once you see that, you're never going to go back again. You can't go back because of the absolute brutality and actions that they're willing to take. So I think it's fantastic. We give the people that, go to jail like Rikers a chance, but they commit violent crimes, they're done. They're done. That's all there is to it. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, you can't have people like that walking around in society. And I completely agree with you about the death penalty. What I would like to see happen is, okay, we deport them once. If they come back, it's the death penalty automatically.
I think so too. And it's just like shipping them off to other countries to handle. Oh, let's just deport them back home. So what? So they can find a way to sneak in, since we don't, since we're still not there with the borders yet. I really don't know if deporting people that are guilty of violent crimes is a good idea. We already know what they're capable of. They're going to go back. They're going to do it again. They're going to try to come back here, and they're going to do it again. And they've got their buddies in place that they can rely on to hide their crimes. It's just like the politicians and such. They know what they're doing, and they don't care. They're psychopaths. They don't want to serve. That's not why they're there. They're there to take advantage of a system that's already broken, and their buddies are in there helping them.
Yeah. I guess that kind of comes down to what kind of agreement you have with the foreign nation, because if they are, if you trust their prison system, for example, and they're guaranteeing that that's where these people are going to go, then if you want, good future relations, I guess you have to trust that. Versus if you don't, and you think there's a good chance that these people who are conducting criminal activity in your country are going to come back, that's a problem.
Yeah. You know what? I've been watching what's going on now is a repeat of what went on in the early 2000s. It's a repeat of what went on in the 1990s. It's a repeat of what started in the 1980s. So I to hell with good relations with those countries down south. We have tried to have agreements with them on borders and economic development, all kinds of stuff. And the people in the United States keep taking it in the shorts. I don't care about good relations with those countries in the South. I care about making our country safe. That's what I care about.
I'm okay with good relations to them, but I'm not like okay with being the kicking boy out here, where they just keep coming back and, well, we need some more money, and coming back and kicking Americans in the face. That's not okay. I mean, if we can have good relations, then we can have, but America's got to come first. And
America has a State Department and politicians who, like somebody mentioned before we started, actually, they've set up all these programs where they can get kickbacks and launder money. So what we need is a government who means what they say. And our government does not have that reputation. I mean, they're like the people who say continually, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And so we keep going through this over and over and over again. I'd like to see him say something and mean it.
What it comes down to really is that we're all running around like, chickens with our heads cut off, looking to find out what the problem is. The problem is that we've got criminals here, and they're not dealing with law and order. They're encouraging the chaos. And then once we do have these networks set up, now they've got a fast track line to money launder in all of this. And, I've really come to the conclusion that the whole climate change, green energy nonsense, this is all about money laundering. It really is. They're laundering in so many different directions. And quite honestly, I'm on a couple of investigations right now. I think it's going to be about time that it's going to look like Jesus turning the tables in this state, because once some of this stuff comes out on how bad it is, I think people are going to be really shocked at what they're actually capable and what they've been doing and the dollars attached to it. I was doing one yesterday, and this is just me noodling around on stuff, and I'm going to put up another website. So just so you guys know that there's a couple of pen names that I've written under in the past, especially when I was in the Anon world before I ran for governor, and I was just researching. That's all I was doing, is researching with buddies, posting some things out there and trying to bring up the awareness as a good digital soldier will always do, right? And one who just cares about America, not really wanting credit, not really wanting anything other than want my damn country back, right? That's about it. So, but I did some research on back then with under pen names, and I had other websites and blogs that I was writing to, okay? And I decided that because I've watched how and I hate the term normies, but that's kind of what it is, okay? People that go to normal news sources and believe everything they say, right? And what have we just found out? That 5,000 of even the alt news has been funded by US aid. We got to stop trusting these people, and anything coming out of their mouth, assume it's a lie, because it is a lie, right? Yep. So yesterday, the last week or so, I've been busy setting up a website, and then I've got a logo for it. It's kind of fun. And I'm going to start actually posting actual research to this. And what I found yesterday was the ties in with Whitmer. I went down a Whitmer rabbit trail, okay? And I decided, let's see how many laws she actually broke. And then also push it in everybody's face, right? We've got Gilchrist, who's announced as governor. And I'm like, you can't make this stuff up. Anybody that gives him any credit for anything, he was a member of World Economic Forum, all right? He is the second in command behind Whitmer. And he just was like, do-do-do, sitting back there doing nothing? I don't think so. And so they market him as the first Black governor. Okay, I'm sick of this identity politics, the racial politics. I don't care if he's Black. I don't care if he's Asian. I don't care what his genetic background is. I don't care if he's like me and he's a hybrid of multiple nations. It doesn't matter. I mean, I can claim the nations of I don't know, probably, half a dozen to 10 different nations that I can claim, right, as my heritage. I don't expect anybody to care. And I sure as hell am not going to be putting on the wooden shoes and dancing around like, hey, look at me, right? It's like, we're Americans when we come here, okay? And, and that sort of thing. And I'm not going to be throwing pasta at anybody. I'm not going to be doing any of this. I'm not going to get out my tea and crumpets and talk about it. Or, like my Highland sheep or whatever the hell I'm going to pull out. It's so stupid. It's like, we're Americans at this stage, right? That's it. And so he comes out, and everybody, it comes out in the news, and it's just like Secretary of State Benson, her breaking her campaign rules right off the bat. She breaks campaign finance rules. And they have the slickest ads for these people. Why? Because World Economic Forum is like funding it. And I have not heard anybody getting on the top of their house screaming. These people were the ones that instituted the unconstitutional lockdowns, mandates, etc., that threw our country into a $20 billion loss economically. And I have the numbers, which is going to be wonderful when I post all of this, and all you wonderful little researchers that are out there like me can jump on this and go through this and absolutely unmask these people brutally for what they've done, and the connections to, I don't know, let's say the energy sector. Didn't expect that, did we? And then the names of the people that are behind it, who were contributing to the campaigns, as well as how they're laundering money into these accounts through the PACs, through everything under the sun. I haven't even hit Nestle yet. Nestle was started a PAC in 2016, which her wife took over, and they they paid over $1 million to the signature gatherers, which crashed the campaigns. And then you got the Board of Elections that were absolutely complicit in this. Jonathan Brader sat there and even was talking about, we really don't look at all of the signatures or all of the petitions. None of this. We don't really look at it. That's a lot of work.
Oh, jeez.
He said that. And
I hope somebody has that on video.
we do.
You should play that, loop that on your website.
Oh, honey, my friend, I love you. We have all of this and it's documented. And what they did to basically say, hey, this is the hearing that I said the goat rodeo in, this is a goat rodeo. I'm like, when they were called us in, like I got 3 days notice to show up to this and I didn't even have an attorney because this was absolutely planned subversion. They had your candidates figured out long before the signatures were ever done. Dixon broke the law and they gave her a pass. She had wrong date on every single one of her petitions. She had the wrong date. They just gave her a pass. The rest of us, they didn't give any pass. They didn't even check the ballots. They didn't check the signatures. They didn't check nothing. And then Nessel's wife gave over $1 million she paid to the signature gatherers for some of the ballot proposals and such that were out there. Are you kidding me? And nobody says a word. But mainstream media goes after the candidates, the only ones that were honest to knock us down and knock us out. And but guess what, guys? We have it all, and it's going to be fun. This is going to be so much fun.
This campaign, I'm telling you, I'm thinking people are still stuck in the old mode. I saw a comment the other day where someone said, I don't care whoever the Republican candidate is, I'm going to vote for them because we can't handle this. Like the Democrat, whoever the Democrats we have to go with the Republican, whoever they are.
And you want to know, that's exactly what they did in Germany. That's what the Nazis took over. The Nazis took over, and the way they did it was through the counties and the allegiance to the party. And I'm going to tell you, it was a populist movement at the time, right? We better start questioning everything. And because even good people can be getting bad information, or like President Trump, what I think he's doing is he's baiting all of us. He is the bait. He's been the bait from day one. He's baited us. How smart are you, kids? Are you able to self-govern? So I'm going to throw out some really bad people and see if you're actually looking into their backgrounds, or if you're just going right back to it again and following the parties who are telling you who to vote for, who have got this thing rigged from way before the signatures come out. They had those candidates picked out that were going to run. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say that it was probably at least 2 election cycles. They had them figured out. And the ones that were compromised, even say, I don't know, Kelly and Karamo, they were in drug rehab at one point in time.
Wow.
That should tell you something right there, that, how do they recruit people into the system? Well, they're going to go into areas where it doesn't matter if they disappear or something happens to them, or if they did a deal with them or something like that. I'm not saying there were. I'm just saying that this is standard FBI tactics and Fed tactics. Look into their background. Look into the aliases that they've had. Look into all of this, because they're not who they say they are. Oh, but guess what? I think that Donanon here is going to be dropping this stuff and letting you guys see who is involved with what. And any more of this absolutely idiocy of axe my tax that Carla Wagner and everybody else has going on, do you realize what you're signing up for with this, or who's behind it? Probably not. This is where we all need to get a little smarter and not just go, oh, yes, axe my tax. We don't want property taxes. Really? Yeah, I don't want them either, okay? But the way they're doing it isn't the right way. This is one of those things where they're selling you a headline, and it's not what they say. Because I actually know, and I'm not putting it out there yet because it's going to be a trap. I'm going to lay a trap for them.
It is. Well,
and
you
they're
know
not
what?
even see it coming. They won't even see it coming.
There was a hearing in the early 2000s on the fair tax, what they called the fair tax. And what it was going to be is a sales tax to replace all other taxes, which, you know, people who don't think, they thought, oh, this is a great idea. Well, I watched the hearing. It was like a 5-hour hearing, and I watched it about 4 or 5 times all the way through. And what it would be is basically about a 50% sales tax on everything you buy. And so, you know, people that are wealthy, they don't give a damn. It's the people, the middle class and down, that would really be hurt by the fair tax. Can you imagine, you know, you're buying a home and you have to pay like a 50% sales tax on your mortgage because that's a financial transaction. So every month, 50% of what you're paying goes to sales tax. And it would be on everything you purchase. It was absolutely insane. But the reason why they were doing that is because tax revenues, I forget what the year was, 2000, 2001, tax revenues fell to their lowest point since 1959 or something like that. And why did that happen? It's because of trade policy. You know, they gutted our economy of jobs and productivity. And so if you export your damn manufacturing, you're exporting your tax base. You know, but
Well,
they didn't.
And what they really want is they want our resources. That's why Nestle in the state of Michigan is such a poster child for criminal money laundering and what our politicians have done. $250 for a permit, and they have pulled what we own. I want everybody to understand this. We own the resources of the state of Michigan. The people of Michigan do. They sold them off.
Water.
And there should have been a royalty. But these idiots go ahead and they let them do that because guess what, guys? There's kickbacks, and there's a lot of them that are coming back to our politicians. This is how they have enriched this global crime syndicate, and it's an economic crime syndicate. They want the resources. There's a video I'm going to post today to start making a case for this, for me dropping all of this information. You should see the friggin' book I found, including the names of people and companies and such that are attached to Whitmer, and how this works, and how the destruction of our small businesses. And she wants to tote, that she added out this many jobs. No, she didn't. She didn't add the jobs. Or the corporate welfare. We're going to pay X amount of millions of dollars to have 1,700 jobs. If you broke that up, you might as well just hand the people the money. They'd be wealthier without the jobs, but they never created the jobs because there's no accountability on this. So anyhow, I'm going to post this video. And it's Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and how this works across the globe in order to basically ensure their power with the politicians. That's how they all get blackmailed. It's not just the honeypots. It's an economic thing where they will say, you're going to do this, 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 and we'll give you a whole bunch of money. Yay. You just won the lotto here. You won the staying alive lotto. And then they say, and if you don't, guess what? You're going to die, or your kids are going to die, or somebody's going to die. But you're either going to do it or you're not going to live. Yeah. And everything you love is going to be gone. And this confessions, if you don't watch anything for keeping an eye on what's going to happen going forward, I would like you to watch. Here's your homework for the day, guys. I would like you to watch this video, because it's going to explain how they look for countries. This is why we have all the proxy countries across the world. We've got Ukraine as a proxy country. Why? They don't even have a real government. Come on, guys. You know, I'm going to do the Biden. Come on, man. You know, they don't have a real country there. They went after the resources, the rare earth minerals and such. And guess who's running it? Our country is. Our deep state country is running it. And the politicians, they're all captured. And they all, honestly, they need to be tried for treason. But so do these people that are, you know, that are criminally involved in extortion and coercion of our politicians. Because I don't think all of them wanted to be in that situation. That's why when you see somebody good that gets in office, that's why they change. It's not always because of the promise of money. It's because they don't even have another choice. And I was told when I ran, they're going to take you into the basement of the Capitol and they're going to tell you how things really work. I was like, really? Well, guess what? I'm not afraid to die. So that's probably not going to be effective for me.
Yeah, that's what happened to Jesse Ventura. And a few years after he revealed that's what they did to him, he did reveal that it was the CIA that did that.
Sure. You know, we need to have a lot of people in there. And I really think that the only people that can really do this, honestly, are Christians, because we know that there's another life. And so I'm not afraid to die at all. Not at all. I've seen the other side, not afraid. And I could talk about that another time. But it's like, I'm not afraid to die. And so the thing of it is if I got into something like that, it's sort of like burning the boats. It's like, if I'm going down, I'm going to take as many of them down as I can with me on the way out. And it's going to, you know what I mean? That's my mentality. It's like, you threaten me pretty extra sure that there's going to be a problem for you. And we'll start out nicely with a legal thing. But, you know, it's like you start threatening people's lives and people have nothing to lose. The ramifications of this are probably going to not come out well. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And yeah, and I don't mean, you know, grab your torches and pitchforks. Don't get all stupid on me. But I mean, there's better ways of doing it, because you don't just want to go after the ones that threaten you. You want to go up, you go like 7 jumps of who they know and who's involved in it, you know?
Yes, absolutely. It's
That may just be unmasking them and handing it to whoever comes after you to be the cleanup crew. Either way, it would be a win-win, you know?
mhm. You know who kicked that off is George Herbert Walker Bush in 1990, along with the Democratic senator named David Boren. And what they did, they let go, they fired all of the old Cold Warriors in the State Department. And George Tenet brought in a whole bunch of new people to be CIA, and they were young and stupid people, you know, just young out of college. And so, what the hell did they know? Nothing. And that's when they converted to our policy being one of economic rather than diplomacy. And they basically turned our whole government into a criminal operation, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree with you. It is a criminal organization, and that's not something that we could just do. You know, yay, we're going to be peaceful. You know, and we're just gonna try to get along. They don't want to get along. We are truly in a war right now. And the biggest thing is the information war to capture useful idiots who will grab onto those crafted narratives and headlines. And it's not just in mainstream media. It's through alt media, it's through all of it, you know. And whoever's taking the money, when they say follow the money, whoever's taking the money is probably guilty. They're guilty of some sort of manipulation, you know.
Yeah. Well, it infected everything. They completely took over and redesigned our government. It's like our education system. I saw a report recently, and we're like in the lower 50% of the world in terms of education. Well, why did that happen? It's because George Herbert Walker Bush formed an organization of corporate leaders on the idea that corporate leaders could design our schools, better than educators. And what they did is they built this system of workforce development. That's why they're moving the education department to the labor department, which I don't object to getting rid of the Department of Education. I do object to moving it to the Department of Labor. They should just dissolve it, period. It didn't even exist until 1977 when Jimmy Carter created it. And before 1977, we had really good schools. California, in fact, they were among the very best schools for elementary and K-12. But they completely changed the purpose of education to be workforce training. I mean, what the hell does a kindergartner know about or care about work? But that's the conditioning that they put the children through. They are not educating the children. They are training them. And there's a big difference.
They're training them to, yeah, as you said, they're training them to be a labor force and worker bees, and that's it. That's why the critical thinking is so absent. It's very absent from our society in general. I had an idea. I'm going to run it past you guys. I think I'm going to do a speaker series to teach critical thinking. And I think that could be fun, like blowing people's mind with what they think they know based on what they've been told or indoctrinated with. And then just on a very simple, throw some things out there like what do you know about this? And have people like raise their hands so that there's so we see what they know. And do you think that this happened? Let them raise their hands and take part. Very interactive, very interactive on breaking down how to question everything. Mm-hmm. I think we need to question everything in Germany. I really do.
I think everybody needs to learn to question everything. I just found a good group that I'm going to start following. It's called the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship or something like that, ARC. And I've listened to 2 of their speakers. They apparently have events and they have invited speakers. And I've listened to 2 of them, and they're really quite good. They're very thought-provoking.
Can you send me a link on that?
Yep, I certainly will. Because it's like, finally, intellectuals are beginning to speak up and tell the truth. Which, for a long time, they were absolutely silent or they were complicit.
And well, you look at how much education people had. Okay, so like I got diagnosed with cancer years ago, and I can tell you the whole goat rodeo in the cancer industry. And I mean, it was just absurd to me. And so, of course, here's Brandenburg, who doesn't follow any rules. I home birthed, I homeschooled my kids, and I was done with this whole system years and years ago, just done with it. Didn't make sense to me. Too much didn't make sense. So I just kind of, no, not going to buy into this, right? And so you go to the cancer doctors, and the first thing he goes, this is just, you just let me worry about this, and you just live your best life. You just do whatever I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense to me because you can't cure this. So that means that if I stay on your little hamster wheel, I'm going to die. Right. And so I went 4 times. I went 4 times to listen to these idiots. And I the second time I came back, and I've already talked about how that came to. Did you guys have both heard the story, haven't you? How they told me about cancer?
I haven't. No.
you want me to tell it again, or do you want me to? Hey, you know what? Talk amongst yourselves. I've got to take this call real quick, and then we'll move on to that. Just hang on a second, okay?
Okay.
Sure. Well, the cancer industry is an industry for a reason. They call it an industry.
Yeah, they've turned people into lab rats.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my dad was told he had cancer, and they gave him radiation treatment. They destroyed, half of his lung.
Mm-hmm. It's
And
terrible.
and he was old anyway. I mean, why put yourself through that torture? Make it so you can't breathe when, if it's a slow growing cancer, you probably die of old age before you die of the cancer.
Right. Well, they use fear. It's interesting because yesterday I'm in a group on Facebook for homeopathy, and someone posted in there, I need to take shingles vaccine. What homeopathy can I use to counter the toxic effects? And it's like, what do you mean you need to use it? You don't need the vaccine. You're actually doing harm to your immune system. And that's the problem here. Why don't you research the causes of shingles and research the homeopathy that would help you fight that if you got those kinds of symptoms, rather than research what you could possibly do to help your body recover from the toxins that are going to do all kinds of things in your body that you can't even track.
Yeah.
You could die from the vaccine, but you're not going to die from shingles, but you're afraid because you've heard that shingles is very painful, and they fearmonger people. They do that with animals too, livestock and pets. Well, they have a jar of heartworms on the counter in your vet's clinic to scare you into giving heartworm, quote unquote, prevention. No, what you're doing is treating for heartworms because you don't understand it. And here in my state, if you understand the facts, you understand you don't have to do that year round, even if you opt in, because mosquitoes only come around so many months of the year. They're the carriers of the microphilae, I think is how you say it, microphilia of the heartworm bug. And that heartworm bug cannot survive in the belly of the mosquito when the temperatures dip below a certain degree. So even when the mosquitoes are out in the spring and fall, they're not dangerous. So there's only a few months of the year. If your animal is, short coated and outside all the time, they might be exposed. But even if they test positive, heartworm, yeah. So even if they test positive the next year, what is the first thing they're going to do? They're going to give you that same heartworm, quote unquote, prevention, which is actually treatment. And dogs can actually survive with heartworm alive in their system if their immune system is healthy, because they keep the numbers down. But in the South, there's so many dogs that are neglected, and they have so many mosquitoes with that problem that people are more hard put to protect their dogs from a more serious infection. But here north, it's not an issue. You have to research and know the facts about it, rather than just be fear-mongered by the jar of heartworms on the counter at the vet's office and them telling you what to do, which they profit by. Yes, they do profit by those things. And it doesn't matter whether you're looking into cancer treatment for yourself, or you're talking about going every year to get boosters for your dog's vaccines that they don't need and are killing them. It's the same thing. And so it's interesting to me that people will be like, I'm never getting chemo, but they'll take their dog or their cat in every single year to get multiple toxic shocks, and then they wonder why they're dead at 6 or 8 years old of cancer. Well, what happened? Well, you fed them crap, that was made literally of crap, 3D meats that were rendered and covered with salt and sugar, and you gave him a bunch of toxic materials all his life, and then you wonder why he had giant tumors.
Wow.
And died a miserable young death.
Can I give you a gimme that everybody could look up?
Go ahead.
Sure.
All right. So you might want to look into for heartworm and such. I'm not telling you what to do, but it appears to me that ivermectin is something that can treat heartworm. So you might want to look into that just a little bit and figure out how to dose it, just like the rest of us do with our horses. And this is all about industry capture. Do you realize that the veterinarians in that regard, it's a cartel. You can't get any of the meds until you go in and have a $400 vet check or whatever it is. Yeah. And all of this other stuff. And why is this not over the counter? To me, it seems like, don't tell me you care about animals as an industry and then only treat the ones when it can be treated fairly easily that come in for the high dollar treatments. It's nonsense. So that was an important call. I'm sorry I had to take that, but that's a very important call. I've been doing some research, and it's kind of making its way up to somebody who can probably get it to the top dog, which is really good. So, because we all want to stand with and support President Trump and everybody that's standing with the nation. And I feel very strongly about that if we vote someone in, then we have to be big enough to be there to help them. When we see something, we have to say something, and we need to bring them the information so that they can go through it, and at least they know. Right.
Yeah, I have to say I am pleasantly surprised by what Trump and the team is doing. They have done some great stuff.
I'm working between a group in Canada and here, and I think that's going to prove to be a really interesting. It's going to be proved to be very interesting and have an effect on, hopefully, positive effect on things. So that's really good. I'm really excited about throwing my shoulder into something, because I do like to research and I do like to connect people, and so that's a fun thing. Anyhow, do we want to go back to cancer, or do we want to go on a different tangent here?
Well, I would like to just say one thing continuing on that topic.
If we can go back to it at any time.
It feels to me like mountains are moving. The things that Trump and his team are doing. I think that Alberta, we talked about Alberta last week. Alberta is Canada's Texas. I think they're getting ready to break up into regional organizational structures, have the actually Alberta join the United States, which I have mixed feelings about, but I understand the logistics of it, because Canada does not have enough of a population, really, I don't think, to function in the world that's coming.
None of the provinces in the middle of it have the population to fight against the big cities and the big centers, which is where the globalists like to put people to stash them, so that they've got the power organized in those areas, and they can manipulate everything from the vote to everything in governance. They can just sit there and laugh at us and do whatever they want, because nobody's holding them accountable. Because there's a post that I put out that basically said that they're going after things in low income areas. Some of the Green New Deals are going after that there, because the reason is that the people in the low income areas are at a disadvantage to fight. First of all, it's a fight just to survive, right? I mean, I grew up as a poor kid. I didn't have the privilege of coming from a privileged family. I was working all the time, and so was my family. There was no way that we could get into it and fight our way, join something to fight our way out, because survival was first and foremost, right? And so I understand. I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but that's just the dynamics. And then you don't have the contacts when you're in that situation. You just don't have the contacts to get to and talk to and be around people that can help. And then the other thing is you don't have the money to hire the high-priced attorneys that it requires to fight this stuff. And I'm going to tell you, there's one effort that I've been working on, and this is one of the investigations I have going on. We approached 60 attorneys and firms. None of them would jump on this. Not one would jump on this. What does that tell you about the injustice system we have going on?
Well, you know what? When I was researching, I wrote a series called The Organization of Power in the United States. And the reason I did that was because the Chamber of Commerce seemed to be leading businesses towards the destruction of our country.
Absolutely.
Reporting H-1B imports and illegal immigration. I mean, it was just their entire agenda was anti-American. And it occurred to me as I was writing that what we're going to end up with is an empire of the black robes, the judges. And they will be running everything, because everything that's going on as they destroy our society, it's going to have to be the lawyers that defend us. And what position does that put the judges in? You know, so we'll be living in the empire of the judges.
I think we're kind of there, don't you?
We're getting there. We sure are.
Well, I think we're seeing that battle play out with Trump right now. Mm-hmm. And it's a great thing to watch, because it's prompting people to explore the really basic concepts of the distinction between the branches of government, where the authority lies. I mean, that's really simple, but yet it's gotten to be complex because of what they've done over the years. And so it's really fun for me a little bit to see these judges just jump in and say, Trump, you can't do that. Well, okay, bye.
Know? Well, the Congress
who gives you the right to jump in there? It's who has the authority here. So I think this is great, because I think one thing that's going to happen is Trump is going to be cleared. The pathway is going to be cleared for bigger and better things once you get this judges conflict out of the way. They're going to prove that Trump has authority.
That's what needs to happen. The Congress needs to step up and write some laws, like disallowing class action lawsuits unless you have a majority of actual signatures from who you're calling the class. Right now, they can get one defendant, call it a class action, and only that one person actually made the complaint. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And the judge shopping, the judges are making money on being judges, beyond what their salary is. The whole thing is really just like totally corrupt. And Congress needs to step up and make some corrections to our legal system.
Well, and coming down to an individual, I mean, every single one of us has to, it's a spiritual question and a spiritual ethical dilemma, because we have to survive. So you need to have certain things in order to survive, right? But what we have to determine is, and this is my opinion, is if things don't go the way that you think they should go, are you willing to trust God to provide for you in all situations? Even if you lose things that you thought you needed, are you willing to do the right thing under all situations? And when these judges and such are being threatened to lose their ability to practice under the bar, it's not a license. There is no such thing as a law license. It's a private membership. So they're going to get kicked out of their little private membership that has, club that has all of these connections and such. It's not a law license. And so, are you willing to walk away from it? And what are you willing to walk away from? And sometimes the cost is pretty high. Okay. So just for example, and I'm going to say this so that nobody thinks I'm just, talking out my behind here. When COVID went on in the first place, right? When that happened, I literally went to a couple of cops and said, arrest me now, because I'm not going to comply. It's not going to happen. They just kind of laughed at me. And I'm like, I'm dead serious. I'm not shutting the businesses down. And we ended up suiting up and going all around and making sure people had food and disinfecting things, trying to calm people down because they were so panicked. And then went the same way with the rail facility. So the rail facility is on UP's busiest superhighway between Chicago and Los Angeles. We're our own short line railroad, right? Pretty good for two port heads who just know how to work. And anyhow, they were like, we're not going to deliver any rail cars to you unless you're a fully vaccinated facility. I looked at my husband and I looked at everybody and I'm like, shut it down. They're like, you can't do that. I'm like, watch me. And my husband looked at me and he's like, looked at him and said, shut her down, gentlemen. And we just said, I'm like, I guess if anybody wants a job, we're going to have to figure this out, because I will not kill people or mandate it. I'll just go sit on the beach somewhere and, whatever, I can be happy with a can of beans, for that matter, throwing rocks in the water, but I'm not going to kill people. And, and God always gives you a way out. If you're willing to stand on principle and ethics, there's always a way. It may not be your way. It's going to be a better way. Yeah. And he knows what you need. He's not going to leave you without it, but it comes down to your faith and saying, you know what? I know this is wrong. I'm not going to participate.
When they were trying to do that here, trying to make people wear masks and beginning to ban people from buildings if they weren't wearing one, and then they started in on the vaccine, I went down to the public health office along with, probably about 40 or 50 other people. And I told the county board of health, I said, you remember the Nuremberg trials, because if you force vaccines, we'll be pushing for Nuremberg trials for you. And fortunately, they decided against forcing anybody to do anything. Thank God.
Smart plan,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think we're going to have some choices to make coming up that will be individual choices to see if the population is able to be selfless enough. I mean, we want our politicians, we want people that are alleged leaders, which I'm not seeing that many of them. Okay. The ones that are actual leaders are kind of working behind the scenes, good guys doing the right thing. President Trump's doing a great job. But when you look at, say, the state of Michigan, I don't see any leaders here. I see a lot of people that are just like, they go along to get along. They don't have a plan. They have more allegiance to these political parties than they do their own people. And they go from one fundraiser to the next fundraiser, the next fundraiser, to have a fundraiser, to have another fundraiser. It's a big party. And the only way they stay in it is by making sure that everybody thinks well of them and this, that, and the other thing. A leader is going to make the unpopular decisions that need to happen for real change. That's what we need to be looking for, not some of this nonsense,
I have a question. Vicky is probably the one person that can answer this, because I've wondered about it for a while. I've written about it, speculating, but I don't really know. So Nuremberg was an international trial, correct?
Yes.
So when COVID happened, a lot of people turned to that because some of the points in the Nuremberg trial were that people were not informed of the experiment being done on them and so on.
Well, it was actually worse than that. They were forcing treatments on treatments, you could call it. They're really tortures. The doctors committed crimes against humanity.
Correct. So this is where I was going with it. One, I had researched a little bit did the principles in the Nuremberg trial become law in America? And in some places, to some degree, it did, but to a limited degree based on what I found at the time. And then the other thing was, most Americans were not forced, depending on how you define it. Mandated is not forced. There were people who were actually grabbed hold of and forced, and most of those were vulnerable, mentally ill, elderly, and so on, maybe children. But if they had a choice and they opted in, did that qualify or disqualify it from that principle in Nuremberg? And is there an actual legal route for Nuremberg in America today?
Well, Nuremberg was about what happened in Germany.
Correct.
And the doctors who were over the prisoners, supposedly in those prison camps. So I think what they were doing actually with the Nuremberg trials is setting a precedent for international law. Now, whether or not a doctor in the United States could be held for crimes against humanity, even if the patient says yes, is a question. I don't know of any cases in controversy that ever looked at that issue, but I would suspect that the doctors could be potentially held as breaking the law, even if the patient says yes, if the patient really is not qualified to make an informed decision.
Right.
And by that, I don't mean just people that are mentally handicapped. I mean people that, old women are notorious for, going to the doctor and getting advice. If a doctor uses his knowledge and does something to hurt somebody that he should know better, then I think he could be held liable anyway.
Well, I'm going to tell you what I saw with my mom, and I'm going to tell you I couldn't believe it. They without my knowledge, they lined up everybody in the home she was in, and they vaccinated them. And I told them no vax, right? Calls me in the middle of the night. I'm paralyzed. I'm on the floor, and I can't get up. I can't move my legs. I'm like, what happened? And she tells me, she's like, everybody in here's getting sick and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, Mom, you weren't supposed to get that vaccination. And I said, okay. So I met her at the hospital, and I walk in there, and that doctor and that head of nursing knew exactly what they were doing. There was a nurse up by my mom's head, and they came in and said, well, she can still walk. They picked her up and kind of like moved her legs like this. My mom was walking 2 miles a day the day before. She couldn't move her legs. And they're like, we're just going to send her back. And then if she falls again, we'll admit her. And I looked at them and I said, so you're sending her back, someone with advanced osteoporosis, so she can break a hip so you don't have to report the vaccine injury. I said, this is what's going on, right? And they looked at me, and the one said, well, if you don't like it, maybe you should take her home with you. And I'm like, you're fired. I'm like, get out of the room and don't you come back, and send an actual doctor that wants to practice medicine, because I'm not dealing with you. And then the nurse started in, and I said, now you're next. The head of nursing, I fired her next. So then they sicked a social worker on me. And the nurse at my mom's head turns her head and looked at me, and she goes, you're right. She goes, you're in the right. She literally said it. And so then they sent a social worker on there. And I hate to tell you this, but I'm a professional ass chewer. I sat there for 40 minutes chewing his ass, because he kept bringing stuff up, and I'm like, I'm not putting up with this. And at the end of it, he said, well, if we admit her, you're going to have a really big bill to pay if she's not necessary. I'm like, if you don't admit her, I'm going to sue you into oblivion right now, because I'm not exactly looking for change around the corner or around the corners of the room. And they decided to admit her. She was in for 3 days, and they ended up putting her into a rehab facility for 3 weeks. They sent her home to break a hip.
Uh-huh.
And they knew what they were doing. When you talk to somebody and see intention in their eyes, come on, we all know that when you meet somebody and you know they're not telling you the full story.
Yep.
And that's exactly what was happening there. And and then one more point, and then go back to the nurses. The nurses in World War II were literally killing babies. It's well documented. They were injecting, the parents would bring them in there and say, I can't take care of my kids. And they'd say, bring your kids and we'll take care of them. They would drop their kids off thinking that they're going to go to a safe place. They literally were injecting them and killing them. It's well documented.
Oh my God, I never heard that.
Oh, yeah. And some of those nurses ended up in the Nuremberg trials, but I can post there's a real great documentary on it. And the fact that they literally, and the parents would come back to see their kids and their kids are dead. And it's like, this literally happened in World War II. We are dealing with these same group of people right now, these Satanist Marxists. And can you even imagine dropping your precious kids off thinking that this is what's best for them, putting them in the hands of nurses that would say, oh, we'll take care of your babies, and finding out later they gave them a lethal injection and killed them.
I don't know how a person would live with that.
No.
Well, they're doing it now.
They are.
I mean, that's a wartime. Well, guess what? We're in war, and parents were actually bringing their children, and still are, to doctors who are, in a sense, lethally injecting them because they're giving them so many vaccines. They're willingly bringing their children to people who are willingly giving them something that is going to cause them harm. It's the same situation. It's just the circumstances are dressed differently on the surface.
I'm going to go ahead, and Sean Starry's here watching, and he just commented. He said, I was a federal armed security officer who was securing an Illinois National Guard run COVID-19 vaccine center. He's talked about it on the show.
Yeah.
In Rockford, Illinois, and 30 people died in 30 days and over 90 injuries. And the one that he talks about is this young gal. And she came in, and her mom was pushing it because she wanted to be a model. And in order to do that, she had to take Sean talks about it openly, what he saw. She literally was dead. And he said they kept the parents away in the back room as they were allegedly they weren't working on it. They just let her die. And they showed up at her mom. They shipped her ashes. It's like all of a sudden she's dead. Mom is like absolutely hysterical, calling Sean, going, she's dead. I just got a package of ashes. That's the last time I saw her was when she reacted to the vaccine, and they shipped her off. They didn't. So what are they hiding? The question is what are they? We are in a war, and it's killing fields that we're in, and they haven't stopped yet. I mean, some of this has stopped, but we've got to stop believing people on face value of what they say. They're lying. It's just like Whitmer going to I posted this weekend. Whitmer going to the White House and talking to President Trump, saying it was a great communication. It was a great time. It's like, she's lying her ever living behind out. There's nothing she says that's not a lie. And it's like there is nothing that's going to come out of her mouth. If she said, I gave my dog the best dog food in the whole world this morning, I'm going to be a liar. Right? Not going to believe it. It's like not going to believe it. If she tells me that the sky is blue, I'm like, she's lying. There's not one thing that could come out of that.
Look up. The sky is falling. Whitmer says it's blue.
Yes. Yeah. No, lies. Not going to believe any of it. Right? She's straight up. She's straight up. But so is the alt media. So are the political parties. So are the candidates. So is all of this. You do, just listening to what they say. These people are like the snake's tongue, telling you because they've studied human beings. They will tell you exactly what they think you want to hear. They're going to say, oh, look, I look like you, so I must be like you. I'm a woman, so I must be like you. I'm a man, I must be like you. I'm black. Now it's okay to say black because that's what they said about Gilchrist after years of being beat up for can't call him black because we're people of color and we're African Americans, and all of a sudden now he's black in the media. Look at the labels that change. It's just like with Israel. I don't hold anything against anybody that's Jewish, Muslim, or anything. I love people, but these governments are a bunch of lying sacks of, we know the word, right?
Yeah.
They are manipulative and they are lying to you. And until we put the research out there, I'm going to read something that I'm going to put up on this website. Let me get you into the world of the Anon here just a little bit. And I don't know where I'm going to start on this, but let me show you how many laws that it started out with, how many laws Whitmer broke, intentional and policy. And then we end up at the, down here to how much money she actually was behind. And Gilchrist was in on this. There's no two ways. He was probably the one. If you listen to Whitmer, her in that debate with her and Dixon was like watching a cat fight a 16-year-old who have no knowledge other than what they're going to wear to prom. Okay. Either one of them were disqualified. They're like low IQ puppets. Okay. We're going to say it. But when you get, so who's pulling the strings? It's like you got Gilchrist, who's a direct line to the World Economic Forum. You got same thing with Secretary of State Benson and how they sold out to the labor unions. Okay, here's just one little ditty here. You've got the labor unions were tied to her, the AFL-CIO, boosting her 2022 when economically it's the 15-hour minimum wage, 27 that worker win that was put into it. And they're all the progressive donors and the True Gretsch book that came out, national fundraising networks, and then the China ties with Goshen EV battery plant and the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. That's how they're moving this money around. Her connection drive Michigan's $10 to $20 billion recovery narrative, and the cost benefit is just not there. I'm going to put this out there where it is a little bit more understandable. I didn't realize that I didn't have this summarized here, so it would go into a very long explanation of why and how they move the money around it. But at the end of it, I've even got the names. I've got the names of the people that were behind it, and what happened with her dad. How's your insurance rates working for you? Her dad had a Blue Cross Blue Shield. He passed the torch to Dan Lope. Dan Lope was the one that ensured that Whitmer got in place. Under Snyder, the criminal, he changed Whitmer from a mutual, or a beneficiary trust owned by the people of Michigan, into a mutual, took it right out of the people of Michigan's hands. And they are all involved in this. All of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been nothing but a massive crime wave since the 1990s. Just building and building.
Mm-hmm.
Our government is just so corrupt. It's just disgusting.
Well, the amount of it's in the 30th percentile of the amount of small businesses that were absolutely destroyed that never came back after her COVID lockdowns. But surprisingly, she opens the door to things like the big box stores and keeps those running. But any person that's not into this economic capture thing, they gotta pass. So, well, guys, I guess we could sit here and talk for 6 hours, but I've got Chris sitting backstage. Hey, Chris.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for having me. I'll be checking out now.
Yeah, let's go forward with this, guys. And then thank you. Vicky will be on next week. And I love having both of you guys on here. This is great because, this is like, I don't know, now people are saying, we don't want another woman in place as a governor. No, I don't want somebody stupid in place as a governor. I don't care if they're men or women, okay? Let's get somebody smart in there. And Secretary of State, you want to know who my pick is?
Who?
Chris Kaijala, and he's going to be on next. If Donna had her perfect world and I could pick the candidates of who should be in position, it's Chris Kaijala for Secretary of State, right there. So anyhow, he's kind of a low key guy. That's a data guy. He's not going to be out there, shooting his face off on every other issue on the planet. He's going to be out there keeping our elections safe. So anyhow, I'm going to bring Chris on. So I'll be back in just a minute. Thanks, Karen, for being on this morning. I really appreciate you being here. And if you want to stay on, that's fine. I can put you backstage if you want to comment, and then we can bring you on later. How's that?
Okay.
All right.
I'll stay on. I know Chris.
Yeah, we'll go for a real quick break, and then I'll bring in Chris Kaijala. Election information that's going to come out. Once again, I think Jesus is about ready to turn the tables here in the state of Michigan, and I'm really happy to see that. So I'll be right back. Good morning and welcome to the second hour of Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it's the 17th, favorite number, day of March 2025, and welcome to our show. And I'm going to just jump right into this right now. Let's bring on Chris. Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Donna?
Good, really good. I'm so happy to have you on this morning. And I know you heard me say that. I've said that before, that my Secretary of State pick for Michigan would be you, my friend. And, because you wouldn't let anybody get away with anything. And that's what we need. We need somebody in there that's a data person, who's effective, who's willing to get in there and dig into this. And not just say, oh, there were no crimes committed in Michigan. And anybody question it? Duh,
Yeah, that's right. Well, thanks. That's nice of you to say that. So I appreciate it.
Benson needs to crawl up back under a rock and just go away somewhere.
It's what's happening out there is pretty crazy. And people just don't, they don't realize that it's still going on, that there's still problems that need to be solved. And it's because it's so obscure, people don't really understand, how to deal with it. So I've been out there. I was in Farmington Hills recently giving a little talk on this. People were pretty amazed at what's happening in the background, but I'm glad that the House has decided to hear some of the information that's out there about what's going on, and hopefully they can make some progress, at least uncover some rocks and make it clear what the situation is, if nothing else.
Hey, I've got a new toy here. So let's put up the election integrity force. What give me a website that I can put up for you guys. And
electionintegrityforce.com. It's our website.
Okay. And we're going to go, I'll add this. Look at this is kind of cool.
We do have a Rumble page too, but we haven't posted anything there for quite a while.
There you go. There you go. Find Chris and all the good people there, because I just love it. Like Sandy and Joanne and everybody that's really been involved over there. You guys are just extraordinary. The heavy lifters are there for election integrity.
Well, thank you.
Election integrity force. And Chris is a key. He is a huge key. He's a data guy. So anyhow, what do you have to tell us today, Chris? Because I know you've been working real hard on a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So last year we kind of went underground and we're not making too much in terms of publicity. A lot of people like to talk about a lot of stuff, but we're interested in figuring out what's going on and seeing if we can unravel the Gordian knot, as it were. So we've been doing some high-level analysis on the state file, qualified voter file. And during the last election, what was interesting is we found that a very large number of voter IDs got sent at least to AV ballots, to absentee ballots. And the number of absentee ballots that were planned to go out was 125,000. Okay, so some people know about this. It's not really in the broader news. I talked to Pat Colbeck. He did a FOIA on this, and he didn't get a lot of information, but because they're doing a lot of communicating through an internal chat software at the Board of Elections and the Secretary of State. So he's going to re-FOIA to try to get more. But I was just reading a couple of the emails at the top, and it's like these people, they think that they own the world, and that the little peons out there who are citizens or residents really have no right or no business being involved in this kind of stuff. I mean, they were talking about, challenging ballots and stuff like that, as if, gee, we got to stop this kind of thing. It's kind of that's not a direct quote. That was kind of an attitude. Okay. So, and I've been involved in that directly in the past. And as you know, probably last time I was talking with you, they changed a whole bunch of rules to make it virtually impossible for challengers to really do it. They also passed a law that was really intimidating to anybody that wanted to be a challenger, because it said that election worker could actually charge a challenger with a felony, which I find to be intimidation on its face, because normal people don't want to be going into a place where they think that they're going to get charged with some kind of a crime if they happen to run into a snowflake who decides that you're pushing them a little bit too hard or something. Not that anybody I know would do that. I know over near Detroit, that place is a zoo, the way they treat each other. I mean, I have direct information from one challenger that I trained. He went over, he's outside the Detroit area, and the clerk just basically, is an elderly guy, started saying bad stuff to him, like, what are you doing? We don't need you around here. You should get out of here, that kind of stuff, and being rude about it. And finally, he decided that this is a little bit too intense, and he went outside to get away from it because he didn't want to engage in it. And this was the clerk for the jurisdiction, came out and started yelling at him in the parking lot. And I called the county clerk, and I said, what's going on? And they were like, oh, we don't, it's not our job, and she's elected by somebody else. And they had 2 or 3 people on the call because they wanted witnesses so that I couldn't say something that they didn't say. Okay, which I am not going to do, but in the climate that we're in, you know how that works, right?
I think everybody should have their cameras out and take pictures of these people when they're doing their crazy behavior, so that other people can see exactly what they're involved in. And if you get a reporter that gets in your face, this is what I do. A reporter gets in my face, I turn the camera right on them. And you want to be out there and be a jerk, then let's just show everybody what you're really all about.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the rule changes are the things that concern me. EIF is a nonpartisan group, so I'm going to be dainty and nice to people as long as I can until they show that they're being absurd. And then, and like I said before, I'm not going to claim that any person in particular is doing fraud unless I knew exactly what's going on. But on this duplicate ballot thing, you look at it on its face and it's nuts, and somebody needs to do something about it. So I'm hoping that the House Oversight Committee will dig into this far enough to find out what's going on. But I'll just talk about this for a minute, and then I actually have a slide presentation. I'd probably like to show you 1 or 2 slides if you're interested. You got a preview.
Absolutely.
What I'm going to say tomorrow. But if you accidentally, there's a glitch, and you accidentally send out 125,000 AV ballots to duplicate voter IDs. Okay, you have a significant problem, especially since the election, for president was won by 80,000 votes. Okay, the slimmest of margins. You happen to do something silly like this? I mean, it's a little bit absurd. Hold on one second. My screen just changed, and I'm going to plug my power in just to be safe. I've already got some other power on it, but so the excuse was that somehow there was a programming glitch. We have a top level analyst who has worked for the government and government programs and does some crazy stuff that I don't even understand. I asked him, I says, can you do this by accident? He said, no, it doesn't happen by accident. There's no possible way. You have to put stuff in. You have to put in lines of code in order for that to happen. Okay, so, and just being an engineer, okay, you got a database, you understand what a database is, right? You have a single line that describes a single voter. Okay, and then you got history files, which obviously on their admission of this, they have access to all of the addresses that any voter has lived in the past. Okay, one person got 29 ballots. 29. Most of them got 2, but they're getting them at separate addresses. Okay, different addresses. And I looked in a local jurisdiction here, teeny little place. They got 215 hits of people that got duplicate ballots, but only 4 of those voter IDs showed up within the jurisdiction. All the rest of those 215 are mailed someplace outside that jurisdiction, another place that they've lived. Could be outside the county even. Now, if you're an election integrity guy and you're looking at what's going on in your jurisdiction or in your county, you're never going to see this. The only reason we caught it is because we were analyzing the entire state all at one time. So how many AV ballots were there? When you have 5 million voters, you're going to have almost 50% of those are going to be AV ballots. You're talking about 2.5 million ballots that are going out everywhere. Now, if you're going to make a glitch like this, I don't know how you make it across every county. There were ballots in every county. Antrim County, all these little counties that are basically one precinct. And I've got a slide on this. And it's kind of interesting because if you look at the populations of these counties, I just looked at the top 4 that account for about 45% of these ballots. The percent of AV ballots sent to these counties are very close to the percent of population, adult population. They weren't exact, but within a couple of percent, it doesn't really make sense how you can encode a mistake and get a nice slice of everybody across every county to be sent an extra AV ballot, or 125,000 of them. So anyway, that's pretty troubling. And to have them make an excuse like that means that somebody, well, even if it was an encoding error, okay, so you go down the line with all the rationales between. If it was an encoding error, that means that the person they have doing the job is not sufficiently doing their job.
Total incompetence.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's worse
that's
than
not if it wasn't intentional, it's either intentional or it's total incompetence. But either way, they lose. You don't just break the law, because refusing to accomplish an honest election is breaking the law.
Right. So if the person was incompetent or made a mistake, which we're saying you can't make a mistake like that. It's not like you flick the wrong switch accidentally. Okay. Then you have the next level up, which is, okay, if you're going to secure an election, you should have people double checking what you do. I mean, why is anybody encoding anything on an AV ballot send? If somebody requests an AV ballot, there's a little checkbox on your qualified voter file that says you asked for an AV ballot, and you're going to send it to the current address. There shouldn't be any encoding. You just send it out. You just say, oh, we're going to send all the AV ballots out now. And look for a little check mark. Check marks in the database. You send it out. Nobody should be encoding anything. Okay, and then even if you were, somebody should be checking what the coding is going to be before you run it, because you don't want to send out extra AV ballots. Okay, if you got your junior guy doing the encoding who has never done it before, you obviously want to have a double check on that. Anybody in an engineering place or anybody in any secure environment is going to have some kind of, quality check.
You have to have a check. It's just like a proofreader. Anybody that is in a position that's putting out actual legal and or documents like that, you have to have a proofread to make sure that it's going out perfectly. They've done none of that across the board. No,
they haven't. So, that's concerning too. And you can see that ripple through the entire system, through all of the QVF stuff, through the GBI Strategies thing, through, I've got just a dozen things right on the top. I mean, I've got a list of 50 things that need to be fixed.
Do you want to share your screen right now? Do you know how to do that?
Let me see.
Go down to present.
Yeah.
And then it'll bring up a window, and then you click on the window you want to share.
Okay.
And then you can share your screen. And then it'll pop up for me, and then I'll put it on.
Okay. Share my screen. Let me see what I got here. Okay, here we go. Why don't you try that?
I don't see it on here yet, so let's see. Let me run you through it. So hit present, share screen, then go up to where it says window, and it'll give you click window, and then click the screen, and then click share.
Okay.
I had to go through that a minute just to show you.
Okay, do present, share screen, and share screen again. And, I see what you're doing here. Yeah, I did it a different way. Okay, where's my...
Real news for real people, by real people at the kitchen table. That's how it works, guys.
That's right. Looking for my presentation here. Let's run the House Appropriations screen here.
Beth and Sean are posting over here. Denise said something this morning. The Ypsilanti is running a scam with new apartment buildings for so-called low income, priced at $1,300 to $1,700 a month, charging $35 a month for washer and dryer. Daughter pays more for rent than our home. Mortgage on a 2,360 square foot ranch built in 2013. Go figure. Whitmer and team promising Ypsilanti great things. And they're criminals.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it's like over and over again what they're doing. They just use all this stuff in order to get the kickbacks to themselves.
Right.
Is it making sense to you how to do this?
Well, I've got a bunch of selections here, but it's not my PowerPoint selection. So it's showing some other things. Okay.
If you want to email it to me too, I could probably put it up.
Yeah. Okay.
Here, I'll put it in here.
Oh, wait a minute. Here's a window here. Sorry, I just do the center tab.
Yep. There you go. We got it. Ta-da.
All right. So
endeavor to persevere.
Yeah, go over this quickly. Yeah, there were 3 tabs at the top of that window, and I was looking at the scrolling list on the left instead. So if you look at the blue box on the left, there's 4 counties listed. with their population percentages for 2024. Kent, Macomb, Oakland, and Wayne. Okay. These are the number of ballots on the AV ballot list. This is the daily AV ballot list from a given day late in October. I'm not sure that this is the entire list. Okay. But I have a database. It shows all of these 208,000 ballots that are supposed to be sent out. This is the list of the duplicates, duplicate IDs. 208,000 ballots represent duplicates for voter IDs, but there's 125,000 ballots that were additional. So it's not everybody got two. Some people got a lot more. And so this is the percentage here of each one of these 4 counties. Kent had about 8%, Macomb 9%, Oakland 13%, and Wayne 16%. So you can see in Wayne, you have over 34,000 ballots were being sent out as duplicates. Okay, it doesn't mean that half of these ballots are the duplicates, because not everybody got the same number. But the cumulative total down at the bottom here shows you these 4 counties accounted for 47% of all these ballots. And if you look up above, these 4 counties were the only counties that had greater than 8% of the totals in this list. So all 83 counties got ballots, every one of them. You know, some of them were greater than 8%. Some of them were between 2 and 8%. Most of them around 3, 4, 5%. And then there was a whole bunch of counties that got a little bit over 1%. And you can see these all account for 75% of this 208,000 ballots. So pretty interesting, right?
Very interesting.
I don't know how you encode something to select, you know, duplicate addresses for IDs across all 83 counties. And how would your coding select them? Well, what was the criterion to select those? Okay, you
And
got
if they put in market segments, that's what I want to know is, do they put in market segments or people who were predisposed to vote a certain way?
Well, yeah, you don't know.
Don't know.
Got a few ballots in Antrim, but you know, not everybody in Antrim votes one way. No county has 100% voting one way or the other. You know, but that's, yeah. So, okay, so that's pretty crazy. Let's see if I can, I don't know if I can move this. And as I've showed you before, I'm going to show you my fancy slide here. This one's kind of complicated, but it basically shows that, look at the inactive registrations down here. According to our Secretary of State, we got 8.4 million registrations right now. But there's only about 7.6 or 7 million adults in the state. So we have more than 6% or more registrations than we have actual adults. But really, normal people in almost every state, if you're a citizen of voting age population, that's what CFAP means. Only about 85% of people care to even register. And I got a report recently from somebody that says it's really more like 75%, which is another 800,000 voters off of this that I'm showing here. But let's take a really high number at 85%. You're going to only have about 67 million voters, 6.7 million voters. Okay. And if you have a 65% turnout, you're going to have 4.5 million voters. Now, they said our last voting was 78%. There were 5.8 million voters. I mean, this is a million extra. I mean, I don't know that we had a 78% turnout. You know, a couple of elections I've seen, the Hillary election and then the Biden election, there were only 62, 64% turnout in our county. But what's really concerning is down here, inactives. You know, inactive voters, I thought, were people that don't vote. So if you have a 65% or 70% turnout, the difference between that 70% turnout and this is how many inactive voters you should have, or it should be from here to here. So she's only saying there's 1.2 million, and it really should be somewhere in the 2.5 to 3.5 million inactives. Okay, so this doesn't seem right to have this low of an inactive. There's not that many people that don't care to ever do anything. And we've actually seen cases where the active status has changed. And apparently if you request something, all of a sudden you're active. It's not like if you voted, you're really active. But if you, in this state, if you just kind of twitch and they see you twitch, they're going to put you into an active state, which means they can keep you on the rolls for another 6 years minimum. But in Muskegon County, it's 10 years. They don't even send a postcard out to you to see if you're really living there until the census rolls around.
So that could be like change of address or even dead voters and such, correct?
Well, they don't even look at change of address. They don't even do any analysis. They send out a postcard. If they don't get the postcard back as undeliverable, they assume that you're still a voter.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, that came straight from the clerk's mouth in the city of Muskegon. Okay, so my son, who lived with his mother on the other side of the county here, he got a Massachusetts driver's license in 2010. He's still on the voter list. He just got a license up in Maine 5 years ago. He's still on the voter list. Okay, why isn't he coming off? Secretary of State knows he's got a driver's license somewhere else. Doesn't make any sense. But here you go. The orange or yellow line here is the population of the state of Michigan from 2013 to October of 24. And this is the registrations. Okay. Now,
A little unnatural.
it's the climate change hockey stick. Okay, it is unnatural. This green line is 85% of the citizens of voting age population plus 500,000. I'd add 500,000 just to get it on the chart. So if you went with 85%, you should be down here at like 6.7 or 6.5. It wouldn't even be on the chart. Okay, so this is all registered voters. This is the number that normally registers. So even historically, going back into 2013, we got too many voters. Okay, and these little bumpsy doodles here, this little bump here, this is the Secretary of State's numbers. Why do you have a spike in the 2020 election?
You got
Why do you have a spike
too.
in the 2016 election? There was a spike as well. And then by July of the next year, what did they do? They cleansed the files. This is a change in like 7.5 million to like 7.3. They took 200,000 voters out. 100,000 voters. How do you know 100,000 voters all of a sudden don't want to vote anymore? Did they all call in and say, "Oh, by the way, take me off"? No, people aren't doing that. And this little spiky do here, the reason we have this chart is because in Muskegon, we did this little some data mining, and the purple line is the adult population since 2015. This is going up to the end of 2020. Doesn't change much. Maybe 350 to 400 people a year move into our county. Okay, this is the number of registrations in the blue as off of the Secretary of State's website. And you can see here, 2016, we got a little bumpsy doodle. It went up and then it went down again. I don't know how it goes down so fast. But after Benson took office on this line here, all of a sudden we had 17,000 registrations added to our file. But what I find most alarming is that the Secretary of State didn't recognize at the time of the election, which is this little green dot here, at 148,000, she's missing about 7,000 registrations. But by the time you get to the end of the first quarter, all of a sudden we lost all those registrations and then some. Okay, and the Secretary of State is plotting this. This is the little bumpsy doodle that you see in this upper graph here. Well, what's odd about it is that the whole state of Michigan has the same bump. And Dr. Franks actually has the data that shows that every county had the same bump in Michigan. So, you know, these are the kind of things that concern us. It doesn't make sense if you're a normal person to see this kind of activity, especially in a county that has absolutely no growth. I mean, where are you going to find 17,000 people all of a sudden that decided they want to vote? Now, the GBI Strategies happened at the same time, but they were only in September and October, which is right around this time when this thing jumped. It was pretty close to the election, 2 months before the election. So and nobody will release any data on it, so we don't even know if that's real.
Why won't they release the data? I mean, shouldn't this be transparent and out to the public? I mean, the public has the right to know.
They don't think so. They hid it. The only reason I found it is because I found a teeny little story online about them turning it over to the police. And there was no other stories, nothing. I don't think the AG's office said anything about it. Michigan State Police went on an investigation for months, and no stories came out about it. The only reason I got it is because I tracked down the investigator, and I asked him, and he gave me the police report number, the complaint number. And we started following up on it. That's when all the reporting came out. We gave that to the MIGOP to release it to the Gateway Pundit. And there's dozens of stories if you want to go read the background on that. But after the Gateway Pundit broke it, Nessel came out and said, oh, yeah, none of this stuff got into the voter file. Well, I have it on some authority that at least 2,000 of them did. But I went in and checked the file back in the end of 2000, and it shows about 8,000 registrations were new that year. But I'm showing 17,000 on that chart. If I go 2 years later and I ask it for how many new registrations were there in 2020, now the history record says there's only 250, which makes a lot more sense. If you only have 400 people moving into your county, then you would think that less than 400 people would get registered. And that makes sense. But what happened to the other 8,000? Don't know. You know, so it's like somebody's using the voter file as their own personal sandbox. Okay, who's doing it? I don't know. It's really kind of impossible to tell.
I think it's a whole group of them, including we have to look at the Board of Elections and the connection there with Jonathan Brader as the chairman of the board of ERIC. You know, and he's the same guy that basically is admitted, oh yeah, it's just a lot of work. We're not going to check all the ballots or the petitions or anything. It's too much work, and that they're just making up policies on the fly. You know, it's like they're breaking the law, and they're all involved in this.
Well, I saw part of what Patrick Colbeck got back on his latest FOIA, which was supposedly related to the duplicate ballot thing. But apparently some lawyer inside there said that, you know, Patrick Colbeck's not allowed to release addresses, you know, to show election integrity problems. They think that that's a violation of somebody's privacy or whatever. But the address is public knowledge. You know, if you go get the qualified voter file, which you're entitled to, you can see everybody's address who votes. It's not a secret. but they want to charge him with a crime because he released a couple of addresses. Okay.
What if he
And
just
then there's a challenger thing. Rader changed the rules on challengers. Secretary of State did, right? And you know that it was challenged in court and they lost in the Court of Claims. And then the Supreme Court put off the fact that they had to rewrite it. When they rewrote it, it wasn't any different. At least the most important one is that a challenger can't challenge eligibility in a Navy Accounting Board. And then there's something in this FOIA thing that came back that says they made a rule that says only a registered voter in the jurisdiction can challenge. Who made up that law? Because the old rules on challengers is as long as you have a reasonable belief, you have a reason to believe that the person is not valid elector. And the only reason you can, there's only 4 things you're allowed. The only one you can really do is whether they live in the jurisdiction, you know. And then they say NCOA data is not legal to make a challenge. Well, NCOA data is the post office saying you made a permanent change of address. Well, that's a pretty good reason to believe that you shouldn't be voting. And if you challenge, then the clerk should go and figure out if the person is still there or not, if they want to clean their files, unless you take it to a judge. And then they're forced to by law. But you can see this list of stuff in this chart here. Eric is in this little yellow circle, says it's the most effective tool to help election officials maintain accurate voter rolls and find possible illegal voting. Well, how do you keep an accurate roll if you can't detect somebody with a date of birth before 1880? Okay, that's not a real person. And Eric didn't do that in 2020. They didn't do it in 21. Matter of fact, in 22 in Muskegon County, it's the second bullet item here, a man who was born around 1896 voted in the 22 election. Okay? Now, he died a year after he was registered in like 86. He registered in 86, died in 87, voted in 2002, 22. Is Eric monitoring the rolls in any fashion whatsoever? Well, this guy didn't exist in the 2020 voter file. So how did he all of a sudden appear after 2020? They got his history because he registered in like the 80s, but all of a sudden he shows up in the voter file? Okay, you know, I'm not saying this is fraud, but you're incompetent if you can't find somebody from the 1800s on the voter roll and take them off. Okay? Just, you're nuts. Okay? So there's a bunch of other things down here that don't matter, but, you know, we've got over 1.6 million registration issues, and they're not really doing anything about it. You know, I requested a list of everybody, this last line item here, everybody who voted in 2020. I wanted a list of all the names and addresses. And they sent it to me. They tried 3 times, but they can't find 6,000 of the registrations 2 years after the election, which means your database is screwed. You don't have a database. You can't find any history. How are you going to get the voting history on an election from prior years if you can't get the full list of the, you know, the exact same number that the county clerk says voted? You can't get it. So, you know, I'm going to present all these things to the House Oversight Committee, and you know, that at some point, you know, who are you going to point to? You know, you don't know who's doing the fraud. I guarantee you this, though. The local clerks don't know what's going on with their voter file. That's my generalized opinion. Because they don't have control over their voter file. They're supposed to by law. They're responsible for everybody in their file, in their jurisdiction. But they don't have the money or the manpower to check it out. When you ask them, some of them in those small jurisdictions, they want to, if you give them some information, they'll look into it. You know, we've offered help, bipartisan help. We don't care who wins this election. Me personally, I got my own choices. I go on the ballot, you know, place there, and I'll vote for who I want to vote for. But as an election integrity person, you know, I want to assure people that the election was fair, no matter who wins. I don't care.
It's the American process.
Yeah, you have to have that. And the people that are in charge of the election system need to have that same opinion. But when you can't get data, when you're trying to oversee the election, when they don't allow you to get data, and they won't give you the data that you asked for on the day that you know, we want the voter file the day before the election. They won't give it to us. And I have a chart that shows how the duplicate ballot stuff started ratcheting up 5, 6, 7, 8 days before the election. All of a sudden, there's, you know, 5, you know, duplicate IDs, 9 duplicate IDs, 1,000, 5,000, 125,000 within days. Okay, so if you can't get the voter file for right before the election, how do you know who was really eligible to vote? And how did they get in there at the last moment? Or did they get a ballot? How many ballots did they get? You know, if your system is so dependent on an electronic system that some guy can make an accidental glitch because you don't have any quality program to check, and Eric isn't doing their job because they can't find somebody from the 1800s, okay, then you don't have a serious system. You really don't, right? I mean, this is evidence of the fact that these people are not serious.
Or they have criminal intention to steal our elections, which, you know, everybody's entitled to their opinion, and that's my opinion.
Well,
You don't make those kind of mistakes. I know, you know, not everybody is willing to risk it and just say they're cheating, they're ever living behinds off on this.
somebody's cheating.
Somebody is cheating on this, and they're cheating big time in the voter rolls, in the registrations, in all of that. I found a couple of ways that they've broken the law flat out. They broke the law, and we've got the chain of communications of how they asked for the law to be broken to help have people working in their government help them find a workaround to get around this, you know, this policy or this procedure. But they're not protecting their votes at all. And when you get kind of an infusion 2 days before an election, there's no possible way I'm going to believe that was not intentional.
Well, some you know, for being nonpartisan, or if I go sit in front of the House Oversight Committee, they need to have a reason to look into it. Well, I got dozens of reasons for them to look into it. Okay, and it's not like it's accidental. It's not like these laws were made 20 years ago and they're problematic. I mean, there are those. But this administration has been changing things on such a rapid basis that they've refused us information. They won't give us a full QVF anymore. They split it up into pieces to make it harder for us to put it back together.
Of course.
Right. And then the data's not right. The history is moving, which shouldn't move. I mean, if I move over to Kent County, they take my voter history to Kent County. How is that even sane? So that means you can't generate a voter history on an old election, because if the QVF changes, then the number of votes change.
So they're erasing history is what they're doing.
Well, they're scrambling it. So the question is, if you have a real database, then you should be able to query it to get whatever you want, unless your database is so dismally programmed that you can't get out the right stuff. So, you know, if I ask for 2020 history, they should go in there and they should say, well, who was there in 2020? The database should show that. But they won't give that information to us. Okay, so they're either incompetent, they got bad systems, or they don't want us to know. Because if we analyze the data, and that's the whole purpose of this, right? Citizenry should be able to analyze the data to check on people, because that's what our system is all about. You double check everybody because you don't know who's cheating. And I don't care if Dana Nessel and Benson are Democrats, and they used to be related to Soros organizations. If they were doing their job, they would do it for all the citizens in the state, right? But
True
they're not
story.
interested in keeping a sound database that keeps the real records, that's transparent to everybody. And that means that they're not doing their job. That means that we don't know what's going on. That means our elections are not, well, we can't be sure that they're secure, right? That's the,
Pretty sure that I'm sure they're not secure.
that's, well, you know.
Looks like a duck, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck. It's a
There you
duck,
go.
you know?
There's smoke, there's fire, right?
Yeah.
And so we went back to the 2020 election, one of the commissioner races, and we actually did a canvass of 20% of the vote in one of the commissioners' races. That commissioner race was won by 292 votes. And I was curious to find out, you know, because the walk-in vote was won by that person by 65% to 35%. Okay. In this last election in Muskegon County, a lot of people had 65% of the vote after the walk-in. And then all of a sudden it flipped, and the mail-in ballot was 65 the other way. Okay, that, you can say more of one party vote on AV ballots than the other, but should it be that big a difference? It seems kind of hard to believe. It might be possible, but, you know, so we checked on this particular race, and we found, we just took 1,600 ballots out of 8,000, and we found 500 ballots that are questionable. Okay.
Wow.
Just out of 1,600. Okay. And you could see from the chart I showed you in Muskegon County, with 400 people moving in every year, we have 1,200 new registrations every year. That was before Benson even got here. And then you had 17,000, and you come up to a new baseline of 140,000 instead of, at the Hiller election, it was 125,000. You know, we got 20,000, maybe 30,000 expired or fraudulent registrations in this county alone. And Eric's not finding them. But I'll tell you, if you look at Pat Colbeck's data from this last FOIA, they said the glitch occurred because they included old addresses by accident of voter IDs. That means that their database has every old address of every voter ID going back how many years? Probably back to 2000 or more, even more than that, especially if you got guys who were registered in 1986. They got addresses on everybody for every year going back where? To the 40s or the 50s, I don't know, 60s. That's a lot of damn information. And if you can accidentally pull up 5 or 6 or 29 of some guy's past addresses, then that means you know where everybody is. You know why they're there. So why can't you find 20,000 or 10,000 extra registrations in Muskegon County? So I guarantee you those people aren't real. We don't have that many people to vote here.
What's really shocking is that they're admitting that there was a problem. If they're admitting that there's a problem, but we're just not going to do anything, they're admitting it. And then, but just don't look, you know, there's nothing to see here. Just move along.
Well, it's worse than
they
that.
literally admitted it.
Well, they're worse than there's nothing to see here. What they're saying is, we don't have to give you anything. You don't really need to know. You're bothering us. Go home. The level of elitism in a couple of the emails that I read there is like, okay, you're making up rules like, oh, if I'm not a registered voter in that jurisdiction, I can't challenge something. No, I'm looking at all the ballots in the state. I should be able to send a letter that says, hey, by the way, we think that you have 200 people in this small little jurisdiction that probably need to be checked out. What's invalid about that? What's illegal about that? There's nothing in the law that says I can't send a nice letter to a clerk if the clerk doesn't want to do anything about it. All right, I'm not no skin off my nose. That doesn't mean that the voters, when they go to vote, or the city council, shouldn't say, hey, are you doing your job? Somebody said that we got 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 of these. Why can't you do that? Oh, I don't have money. Okay, we'll give you money. Voters should be out there giving money to clerks to clean their rolls. Precinct delegates on both sides should go out there and clean the rolls. Unless you don't care. If you don't care, then you think the system's doing fine for you. I care. I don't care if it's a Republican or a Democrat. You got illegal votes going out to a Republican, get it cleaned up, then the Democrats won't be able to complain, and vice versa.
I think it's so important. We have to protect the rights as much or more so of the people we disagree with. And that really is really what defines us. If you're only protecting the rights of those people you agree with, you're not protecting anybody's rights. You're just pushing an agenda, like go sports team, go, you know, I want this party to win or that party to win. And that's, I think, why we've gotten ourselves in this position right now. We're really at a post two-party system metric right now because they can't, the whole system is broken. And unless you're ensuring the rights of the individuals and not being skewed by the whole thing is skewed. It's not at one level, it's the whole thing. But
a bigger problem is this. It's like our current president says, you know, the southern border is having problems. Why? It's not because we don't have enough laws. It's because we needed a president that was going to enforce the law.
Right.
Okay, so do we have enough laws or enough guidelines to run a sane and safe election in Michigan? I don't know, because you don't have the voter ID thing, right? That's the biggest problem with me. But you can always track that down if you want to, because they force everybody to sign an acknowledgement, you know, an affidavit that says they are who they are. And if you're an election integrity person, you can get a list of all of those affidavits. And you can go knock all the doors. I can live with that. It's not very good, but I could live with that. But if you don't have a person in the office taking care of the clerk's function, who's willing to put their partisan politics aside and do the right thing, then it doesn't matter how many laws you pass. Right? This is the problem with prosecutors that won't prosecute violent crime in major cities, or the sanctuary policies that want to overlook federal law or even state law about what to do with violent criminals or trafficking or drugs or whatever you want. So why would a person not enforce the law? Gee, I don't know, because that's not my paradigm. But as you know, the pagan worldview has a different paradigm than the classical Christian American worldview. And people try to say, well, that's not American. Well, what is American? If you want to define it in terms of our founding fathers, we had a basic, you know, Christian belief in the truth, in law and justice, right? And in order to make our system work, we only needed a constitution that was, how many pages long is our Constitution? It's minuscule, right? Because we're supposed to be governed by our desire to obey God. And God's law is pretty short, but it has a lot of implications, right? Once you decide that that's not valid anymore, you can make up anything. You can make up anything you want to live by. And we see that all around us. People are making up all kinds of stuff. A lot of us are unhappy about it, and all the people that are making stuff up are unhappy about us, because we're tethered to a rock that doesn't move, and we gotta conform our lives to things that we don't want to conform to, because we'd all like to be doing whatever we want to do too. We know that there'd be total chaos and anarchy as a result of that. So, you know, if you want to change the law, you can change the law. If you change it to undermine the system, then we know where you stand, right? That's been happening a lot in the last couple of years. And when are people that want to really have a good system going to stand up and say, no, we can't do that anymore? Well, stop electing people that don't have any spine, that don't believe it in the right thing to do, even if it's against your personal feelings or whatever, because this state voted for one guy last election, and before that they voted for a completely different person by razor thin margin. How many cheap votes and fraudulent votes were in there? I don't know, but I would tend to suspect, as much chaos as I've just shown you, that somebody ought to be checking, because I don't have a warm, fuzzy feeling that we got a handle on this, not by a long shot.
How many decades do you think the cheating went back, if you really want to be honest? Just your own personal view.
Oh, in this county, forever. They didn't have to cheat, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, because there was an overwhelming, blue-collar union presence in this county that always voted Democrat. And maybe for good reasons, maybe they did some good things, I don't know. But that support has been falling away over the past 10 years dramatically in this county. And, it's scaring the living daylights out. I think that's why GBI Strategies showed up in 2020. Because if Muskegon had been lost to the Democratic Party, that would have been a huge blow for them. They've always controlled this county. But it's not blue anymore. So it's on the razor's knife. Who's going to get out the most people to vote? That's really how it's going to turn. Except now you see that there's a whole bunch of things you can't be sure are right, and nobody's willing to do anything about it. Who's in power? So that's why people are upset.
That's a big problem, and it's an embarrassing big problem that the people that are in office are not. There's a bunch of clerks that I talk to, and they're like, "No, we had an honest election. There was nothing wrong here." It's like, if a citizen brings something up to you and they've got a question, you better be able to prove what you have to say. And if you don't, then you've got to look into it and say, well, let me look into this a minute. Where exactly, and help them. I mean, not everyone that's doing the wrong thing is guilty of a crime, except for just a crime of ignorance of knowing the subject matter, right? So if they were to move forward and say, well, help me to understand this problem or why you feel that way, and then look into it, not just run interference on all of this and say, no, it was perfect. That's my red flag right away. It's one of them. I have a lot of them, actually. And I've got a question for you on the House Oversight Committee. Can you name those individuals off the top of your head that are a part of that?
No, but I was online. They have a channel, a YouTube channel.
Yes, I heard about that.
And Scott Ogney sent me the link to the last one. It's the House Oversight Committee. It's Tuesday mornings at 9:00. And I've actually got it on my screen here. I could show it to you.
Yeah, do that, please.
If I can find. Let's see what we got here.
Okay, got it right here. We've got, here we go. I'm going to go ahead and put this up too. We've got Jay DeBoyer, Matthew Berling.
Yeah, Representative Rachel Smith is the chair. Boyer is the vice chair. They were both clerks in their past life in Ottawa and Allegan or something like that. This is the YouTube channel here, House of Representatives Oversight Committee. This is from 3/11. This is Representative Schmidt started. Here she is right here.
Oh, here, I got to share it. Sorry. Okay, here we go.
If you have a chat, I could put this link in here.
Yeah, in the private chat.
Okay, let me put that in the.
This is kind of, oh, hang on a minute. Let me remove that a second while you're getting that around.
There you go.
The other thing, okay, you switched channels or windows on me.
I just put it in the private chat there.
Okay. Hang on a minute. I will share it right now. Oh, see, I can put it, I'll put yours up there too. There you go.
Right. So she's testifying that they're trying to get just the training materials from the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State has them locked behind a password protected door, and they don't want to give it to them because it's password protected. And so they discuss, like, okay, well, is it private? Does it have private information? She says, no, it's just training materials. So it's like pulling teeth just to get their training materials out. So she goes on for 20 minutes or so talking about different things. And at the very end, I think Merriman is on the committee. Here's Regas. So there's some names here. Who is this? Putsky or Pulutsky? I'm not sure. So they have a number of, I mean, you can look up this. This is De Boyer was the chair since Schmidt was testifying. Here's Catherine Edwards over here. So there's, I don't know if there's a dozen of them here.
Let me show you what I found here and a second. This is kind of interesting. Let me see. This is from Michigan.gov. I find this to be really interesting because it's got Jay De Boyer as the chair.
Yeah.
Matthew Berlin, Reggie Miller. I'm not even seeing. I'm not seeing Rachel on this.
It's the House Oversight Committee on Election Integrity.
Okay. Maybe I've got the wrong one here.
I think they have several.
Yeah. So hang on. Let me look at that. House Oversight Committee on Elections.
Want me to stop sharing here? Or?
All right. Let's see. Yeah. Here, I'll remove that. There we go.
All right. So anyway, they're looking for, ideas on what's important to people that are working with elections. The number one thing, well, there's a lot of things we'd like to know, but one of the things Pat Colbeck asked for was we need the transaction logs for who made what changes in the QVF. If we had the transaction logs going back to 2019, we'd be able to tell exactly what's going on.
They're not even logging. They're not even logging.
Say again?
They're not even logging who made the changes.
Well, we haven't seen that transaction log.
Oh my goodness!
We want to ask for it. So if you know who did what, then we can tell who took out 20,000, who added 17,000. But the problem is that Eric has direct access into our system. So Eric is in Ohio. We can't FOIA Eric.
So Eric can go in there and like make a few changes and they're out.
Well, they're supposed to clean the system up, or at least tell people what's wrong. I asked some local clerks here. I said, do you ever hear anything from Eric? They say, who? I said, do you ever hear anything from the Secretary of State saying how many registrations have been added to your file or taken out of your file? They say, no, I don't know that. There might be a way that they could look for it. I mean, they could download their file anytime they wanted. If they downloaded it every, other week and ran some kind of a program to look at the changes, then they'd be able to tell what's going on. Why? Look, if you're the jurisdictional clerk and you are legally responsible for everyone on that list, then if I was Secretary of State, I would tell any third party, you have to write a report every week to the local jurisdictional clerk. If you make any changes to their file, you need to tell them what the change was and why you made it. Okay? And if that jurisdictional clerk thinks, hey, what the hell are you doing? Then they can fix it, or they could take some corrective action. But right now, they don't even know. So when we talk about clerks, I wouldn't yell at the clerks. too much unless they violate your challenger rights, which a number of them do. But most of the clerks, as far as I've seen in the voting places I've been in, they're doing a good job. They pass the paperwork around, they sign things off, they take care of your ballot. Okay, who knows what happens when you take that up to the county clerk and they run it, because they're running it through the state system. They don't have it really locally, I don't think. Okay, but stuff can happen once you transfer that file. And where is the quality system that says that you have security on the transfer of information on your file? You know, if you can't get the tapes and the records right out of the counting board when they finish their counting, how can you be sure? Because I'll tell you, in the city of Muskegon, for the first 3 elections that I was a challenger there, I didn't even know that the counting board produced a report at the end of the night. And on the 3rd election, I said, I want the report. And they said, oh, I don't have it. I said, why? Oh, this is not a tally machine. This is only a scanner. So what do you mean? So, well, because they put this jump drive into the side of the tally machine. They downloaded the results. Everybody's going home. They've secured all the bags. They've signed off all the paperwork. And now the clerk is going to take this jump drive up to her office by herself, put it in another computer that was bought with Zuckerberg money, $100,000 worth of machinery here between that scanner and her tally machine. And she's going to stick it in there and she's going to come up with the results. I'm like, what? Nobody's there. There's no challengers. There's no election inspectors. Now I trust this individual person. I don't know what that software is doing. Is she connected to the internet? Probably. Do they have access to this program? I don't know. Nobody knows anything. And they're going to produce a report, and that's going to go to the county clerk. Wow. Email? They're going to send a file? I don't know. Then they decided, okay, after I pushed on this a whole bunch, then they decided they're going to bring this machine down into the AV counting board, produce the report in the room. Okay, well, that's a nice step, but I still don't know what's inside your black box. At least it's not connected to something external. And if I've got a written report, then at least I can tell if the number changed between that room and when the county clerk posts it, or when the Secretary of State finally puts it in the overall QVF. You need that kind of security. So what we need, if you're going to secure the election, the first step is people have to volunteer to be a challenger in every jurisdiction. If you want to be an election inspector, that's fine. Just get all the tapes at the end of the day. Make sure they secure all the ballot boxes and bags so that if a recount occurs, you can recount. Muskegon had a recount because this election was just like 2020. A whole bunch of people were 65% to 35% winners after the walk-in. And then after the AV ballots came in, 2-to-1 flip, and they lost by small margins, just like the election I told you about in 2020, losing by a few hundred votes or 1,000 votes out of 90,000 votes countywide. Okay, so people were concerned about that, and rightfully so. And then all the clerks got bent out of shape because people started writing reports and asking questions. Why is the vote count flipping? Well, they didn't ask the question in the most nice way. The vote count flipped because the AV ballots had a disproportionate number going the other way. Well, why is that? Is that real or not real? Could be real, but I'm telling you,
Unlikely.
it's unlikely, right? Because it doesn't make sense that with that many votes, if you have 90,000 votes, whether you walk in or mail in, you should have roughly the same split, wouldn't you think? I think your average person, statistically, you would think that would be true. It may not be true. Maybe it was 10% or 15%. But when it's 2 to 1, you know, if you walk in at 65-35 and the mail-in ballot is 35-65, the other way around, the opposite way, especially if I can tell you that there's 20 to 30,000 votes, you know, registrations in this county that are not real, and a bunch of them that were put in 2020 and in successive years, you know that they can't be real because there's not that many people here.
Right.
There's not that many people here. And so I got to dig through this. And meanwhile, somebody's pointing the finger at me saying, you don't have a right to do that, or I'm not going to give you any information. Or Eric, they don't tell me what Eric's doing, and they're obviously doing nothing unless they're causing problems. I mean, what I'm really worried about is if Secretary of State threw in a whole bunch of stuff when she first came in. Why? I don't know. She took old information that was removed by Terry Land and Ruth Johnson, put it back in the file. Now, if those are not real people, wouldn't that be illegal?
I would think it is. It's like there's no explanation that's a rational one to explain this.
No.
It's intentionally corrupting the voter file.
Yeah, well, yeah, you know, as a nonpartisan.
How do you take ones that have already been removed and disqualified and saying, now we're just going to throw it back on without an explanation of why they put it back on? Because it doesn't make any sense.
Well, they claim, the thinnest explanation is this, that they want everybody to have the possibility to vote, and we don't want to take anybody out that might possibly vote. Okay, the way you dispel this thing is like every other state that has HAVA. I come from Massachusetts, okay? They're a bunch of lefties, and they have a 2 major election, and you're out. If on the next year you vote, then they'll put it provisionally in, and they'll go and check and see if you're a real person. But you're gone after that. If you still live in the state and you want to vote again, you go register again. Okay, get off your duff, walk down there. Now you can do it online, but you got to register again. In this state, we go 6 years, 10 years. We got people from the 1800s that haven't voted once, and they haven't been removed from the list. Do you have to go and knock on their door to find out if they're real?
Well, Chris, I don't know. We don't want to discriminate against dead people now, do we?
Discriminate against dead people. Okay, so that just tells you right there, they are not serious. I can make that statement unequivocally. They're not serious. Are they producing fraud? They're certainly facilitating it. Isn't that the job of a clerk, to keep the folder clean? And everyone knows who does any reading that the AV ballot is the easiest way to cheat. Okay, so if you want to do AV ballots, all right, but you got to put some security on it. We have no security. And we have a voter file that's so full of trash. If my front yard looked like that, my township would come out and cite me and forcibly clean it up and send me a bill. And we can't keep the voter record clean. Not to mention the fact that the system is so old and clunky that some people are not sure whether or not it was ever programmed right in the first place. So, you know, it might be bad and they're having problems dealing with it. Okay, that's a fair assessment. Then fix it, right? But it's not that hard. If you can go in there and go like this and find 125,000 extra ballots you shouldn't have put out, then you can go in there and go like this and say, all these guys over here, they moved a long time ago. In 2020, somebody sued the Secretary of State and said 16 jurisdictions were over-registered, and they won. And the Secretary of State said, okay, if you take all the local clerks off the lawsuit, I'll take some people off. And so he did, and they took 177,000 people off the rolls. And I looked at them, and they were like people that had driver's licenses in 2015. Okay, well, why have you been sitting on that for the last 5 years? You take them off the same year. You take them off 2 days before the election, a month before. None of this, oh, I can't take them off 90 days before the election. No, if they're real people, you can't. But if they've got a driver's license or a permanent change of address, yeah, you can take them off. So they have a lot of excuses why they can't do what they're supposed to be doing. I could regale you with a whole bunch of stuff going down through election inspector parity at the polls, the challenger rules, all the suits that she's lost, that she's never fixed anything, and there's no accountability for it. And then the nasty attitude that they give back to people that are trying to evaluate the system. So it's really blatantly a really bad thing that's going on, and hopefully the oversight committee can have enough cojones to not sit around and diddle with this thing, but get down to brass tacks and find out what's going on. Because if the striking thing is that they were letting us have data before, up until the beginning of the last election, and then they refused to give us data, and then they gave us a report that had nothing in it. We got a bunch of names, no addresses, no, nothing. We're like, okay, what the heck is that? All of a sudden you decided you can't give us the rest of the information? And they certainly not are going to give us right before the election, because it's pretty clear. Not only is there a bounce in registrations leading up to elections, even without GBI, but the day before the election, we have no idea what goes on those SD cards. And when they come back, the electronic poll books and all this, it's pretty clear. When people are hiding stuff, that they're uncomfortable telling you really what's happening. That means somebody's doing something to me. Okay? You can't trust your elections if your election officials don't give you the damn data.
Yeah. It's our election, and it's we the people that should be honestly absolutely in charge of this. They're not supposed to, by law. We're supposed to be conducting the election, and they have literally commandeered the entire process and given orders like a king, queen, like a monarch, on how the rest of us are supposed to, little peons are supposed to fall in line. And if we ask any questions, you're going to go, to the dungeon with you, they're going to threaten us. How many times has Benson had the audacity to threaten the population of Michigan? It is outrageous. And every single one of us should be madder than hell over what these people have done. Not one of them. And it's my opinion that we need to clean house. I think we need to clean house. And anybody that's, vote them all out. Let's vote them all out at the minimum, just so we can have a turnover, and then turn it all over. Just vote them all out. Okay. So, but we've got to start prosecuting this and getting to the bottom of it, so we just don't have a replacement. We've got, it's bad. Karen, you want to chime in? You said, get mad, Chris.
Yeah, the whole time. I've met Chris. I started working with Chris initially, and then I got involved in assembly stuff and couldn't go to the meetings. So I'm familiar with Chris and his ways, and he's so calm. He's very analytical, and I'm like, get mad. Like he finally said what I was waiting for him to say. They facilitate at the very least. So this is wrong. This is a violation of the law, and it's a violation of rights of every single voter. So it's okay to get mad. I want to see Chris get mad and say they're wrong, and I want to see prosecutions for this. And the other thing I was thinking was, all the things he's describing, it's done. Like you were saying, I know there are clerks who are not doing their job. I mean, I heard our clerk say that her elections were perfect. I witnessed that. And shocking to hear her say that because of all the problems that you've really fleshed out more in Muskegon County. But not all the clerks, and our township clerk has gone out of her way to help prove that the election that she operated was proper. And she gave me Zuckerbuck money and showed me, on paper at least, where exactly it was supposed to be going. And so not every clerk is bad. I get that. When you go up the rung, at some point, somebody's got to pay. Because if you didn't figure it out and you didn't accept when the people came to you with a problem and instructed you to fix it, that you had a duty and obligation to do that, and didn't start working toward that, and also be transparent to the public, making it clear, hey, I am working on this. This is what I'm doing. I am investigating this problem because this is wrong. Then you're not doing your job. The Secretary of State needs to get fired. The Bureau of Elections needs to get fired. If at the very least they need firing, but at most they definitely need, in my opinion, prosecution. Of course, who's going to prosecute them? Because the head prosecutor, has also been facilitating it. And so there's where our problem is. How do we then make the step of prosecuting where we can't get a prosecutor?
Hey, Karen, it's even worse than that, okay? Because
I know.
they're beating on the lawyers in such a way that not one lawyer in 1,000 will stick his head up.
Yep.
I talked to a guy who does election law all the time, and I asked him if this is in 2020, asked him if he would take certain things. He said, no, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole, because he knows that he's going to get dinged by the judges and by people won't give him any work anymore.
Well, then he's also part of that system which facilitates.
Well, this goes back to what I said to Donna at the beginning. People are spineless.
Yes.
They don't believe in the law. When you do that, you don't believe in the law, because the whole point of a constitutional republic, right, is that the law is what governs.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to change the law, that's fine. If you don't like the law, tough. It's still the law. You still should prosecute it the way that it is until people say, oh, we shouldn't really do that anymore. Let's change the law. No, but right now people are afraid, and so they don't follow the law. They won't prosecute the law. They won't deal with it on a straight up, does this violate the law or not? So then people can pick winners and losers, and they can they run the other way when there's a vast group of people that are all willing to go one direction, and they won't help the rest of the citizenry get their rights taken into account under the law, right? So,
as Donna was saying earlier, she was talking about labels, and we just want to use the word American. Well, there is a byword there, which means anti-American. You're either an American or you're not. And if you're not, but you're here, and you're dedicated, allegedly, because you gave an oath to do a particular job for the support of America, whether that's at the state level or the county level or the national level, then you have a duty and obligation to fulfill that oath. It's like the doctor, do no harm. If you are willing to look the other way, I mean, this is a biblical principle,
right,
and do nothing when you know you should do something, then you're part of the problem. And in a sense, you therefore fall into the category of anti-American.
Guilty.
So all those attorneys that, especially, bar registered, so do not give their loyalty and their allegiance per their oath to this country, then you're anti-American. You're not doing your job. You're not doing what you probably set out to do when you were young and you first started that educational path. I want to help people. I want to do the right thing. That's usually what they start out doing. And all of a sudden they go, well, I'm a little afraid, or I'm a lot afraid. Well, Chris Kyle's not afraid, and he's just a dude, who doesn't have a attorney's privileges, but he's He's out there doing his part, which is his duty and obligation as a Michiganian to do, which is to, as you said earlier, and I think it's a great thing, you were trying to collect the data and examine it. And when you found that it wasn't what you wanted to see, you gave instructions to the functionaries that they needed to look into it. That is your duty and obligation that you've picked up that most of us haven't. It's maybe not our lane. It is definitely your lane and your role to play, because you can play it better than just about anybody. You're doing more than anybody in the state, as far as I've seen, to report on it to the public so that the public can then do their duty and obligation to say, hey, look at what Chris said. Look at the paperwork. The data is there. Now we have to take action. What's the action we have to take?
And that's so to my point, that who I would choose for Secretary of State is Chris Kaijala. Okay, right. He's actually doing something. And I love that. I hate to do this, guys, but I got to wrap it up because I've got another meeting to get to. And I'm on a couple of different investigations. And to your point, Chris, is that we went to 60 attorneys and law firms, and no one would touch one of these. And right. It's an open and closed case. And so this is, the system is rigged to protect those within the system. So I'm going to give you each 30 seconds, and then I'll go to a prayer, and then we'll give you 30 seconds to closing remarks. Actually, I'm going to give it to you, Chris, and then we're going to go on our day. Okay. So, dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for Chris, for Karen, for Vicky, and all these wonderful people that have dared to step forward and not be part of the crowd, but actually be leaders and show what's going on here. It's just amazing that you have brought so many of us together. And I really feel that there's just an overwhelming sense of hope where we can face these problems with bravery, knowing that you are in charge of all of it, knowing that you're leading us forward. We pray for this nation. We pray for the people of America to have the courage and the strength by you, that they would turn to you and you would give them that courage and that strength to stand up and do the right thing, not just to do the accepted thing or to go along and get along. We're so thankful for everything, but that they would follow you and your guiding and your direction, because this is your world, your sandbox, and we're willing to play by the rules that you've laid out for us. Thank you so much for everything you've done. And I ask that you would give everyone out there peace and hope and joy this day as we go forward, knowing that, yes, nothing changed from yesterday or the day before when we didn't have the knowledge of this. It was always going on. And now we just know what's happening. We ask your blessings on President Trump, General Flynn, Admiral Rogers, and all the good guys out there that are working to restore this nation. Dan Scavino, there's so many good people out there. I couldn't even begin to name them all. But please, you know who they all are. Keep them in your protection and give them your favor. And we just thank you for being such a great friend to us. And we want to be a great friend to you. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. Okay, Chris, why don't you close us out here, Chris, and then we're going to go on to our day.
Okay. So, the bottom line is this. You need to dig into data, find out what's real, go and ask the question, and then find out if somebody's willing to do something about it. And the people that are not willing to do something about it either don't care or they're part of the problem. Okay, so that's what we're doing here, and that's what I've always done. I don't point the finger at somebody saying you're doing fraud, because I don't know who's doing it. But I know one thing's for sure. Our system right now is so cobbled up. It's like the southern border. We got plenty of laws and stuff to be able to do this if the people that are responsible would do their job. And the clerk has one job in elections: get the data, save the data, share the data. And that's not happening. They're facilitating a bunch of crazy stuff, and then they're going out of their way not to let people like EIF, which we have a great group of data people, to be able to look into it, because I believe they know we're going to find it. It's going to be there. It's in the data.
And EIF is the best. The EIF is doing the heavy lifting in the state of Michigan. And if you haven't gone on and seen what they have done please join them. They need your help, and they literally are doing the heavy lifting for the state of Michigan. So if we're to have free and fair elections, you want to get on board with the people that are actually doing the work, not just talking about it. And, you guys have my full support. I just love every one of you. And I don't do that very often, but I know you guys, and I'm just so thankful that you had the guts to step forward. And thanks for being on today, Chris. I think we should have you back on again shortly so that people can follow up more, because I'm sure more questions are coming. I'm looking at the chats here and such. And there's we don't even know if Terry McCoskey won sheriff position because he was winning earlier in the evening, then lost by a small amount later on. There's all of this across the state. And everybody that's even paying attention a little bit understands what's going on. But you guys have the data. You've got the goods and the receipts. So with that said, thank you so much. Let's go to that part of the show. Boys and girls, go to brandenburgforgovernor.com, because I'm the best non-conceder who's ever non-conceded in the history of the United States of America. And I'd like to have a discussion with the rightful president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump, who also did not concede the 2020 election. I did not concede the 2022, and this is my protest, and I'm sticking with it until we see behavior change. So with that said, everybody, God bless you. God bless everyone whom you love, and God bless America. Make it a great day. And to you, Chris and Karen, thank you guys for coming on. You're great friends, and I really appreciate everything you do, and may God's favor always be upon you. And I'm just proud to stand with you. Everyone in the chats that have been putting information out there, I've been reading all the comments and such as you've been out here. And Beth and Sean and let's see who else we have here. We've got Leb, who's been on here, and let's see, we've got I can go through this all. We've got a lot of people that were on here actually. To go through the Russ Alford was on here as a J6er, and everyone, but God bless you all. And I'm so thankful for all of you. Charlotte was on here, and Denise, and everyone. Thank you so much. And we will see you tomorrow with John Tater Tuesday, and talking about the lawful defense of our nation, because we're going to keep fighting forward. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Stay on the line a minute, guys.